behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, and all my colleagues at Teamwork Arts, welcome back to JLF's Brave New World. Our magazine partner for this series is The Week, Journalism with a Human Touch. Our next session for the day is Writing Family, Avni Doshi and Diksha Basu in conversation. Two Indian writers speak of their different takes on family life, one full of wit and humor, the other dark and overshadowed by pain and misunderstanding. In this conversation, Avni Doshi and actor and writer Diksha Basu discussed the nuances of love, friendship, betrayal, alienation, and class conflict in their work. Avni Doshi was born in New Jersey and was a Charles Pick Fellow in 2014. Burn Sugar, Girl in White Cotton is her first novel. It was longlisted for the Tata First Book Prize in 2019 and is on the Booker Prize longlist for 2020. Diksha Basu is the author of The Windfall and Destination Wedding. She is a columnist at Mint Lounge, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, the BBC, and other publications. She is currently teaching creative writing at Columbia University, but as she says, it's a distant learning program for now. All our sessions that have been broadcast till now are available on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, and on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. Please do remember to comment and ask questions by typing it into the comment section. And in case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can find us on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. And of course, if we drop off, just hang in there. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, Writing Family, Avni Doshi and Diksha Basu in conversation. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Sanjay. Hi, Avni.
Hi, how are you?
Good. It's so good to see you. Congratulations on quite the banner year while the rest of the world goes up in flames. You have a new baby and a Booker long list.
Honestly, it's crazy. I'm a little, I don't know, overwhelmed by I'm literally overwhelmed because it's just been so busy. I'm having a newborn is busy anyway, and then added to that, all of this mayhem. So, but I'm super, super grateful, and it's amazing.
Listen, I want to start with, I just wanted to ask you, because I feel now that I've read your book, it's bringing back for me all the conversations that we had almost a decade ago, many lifetimes ago, when we first became friends in Bombay. And I feel like now that I want to know so much more about why I met you that night at Sarnath's art opening. Why we came, because what your relationship to Pune, the ashram, why we both ended up together that night. I want to go all the way back there now that I've read your work.
It's really funny. I wanted to ask you the same thing. Was it at Sarnath's exhibition or was it Bani?
Oh, no. Exhibition? Well, Sarnath introduced us. I don't remember who was which one it actually was.
At Project 88 in Mumbai, right?
Yeah, you're right. It might have been Bani's.
It was like a decade ago. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how we started talking or based on what. I just thought, in fact, I was very attracted to you. I was kind of like, she seems really interesting. And I kind of was, wanted to speak to you anyway. But
same. I feel very validated in that now.
But were you writing at that time when we met?
No. Were you?
Neither was I. And it's really interesting because I think we were both, I think you were acting at the time, right?
I was, yeah. Yeah. And you were working in art.
Yeah, I was in the art world. I was curating. And then we both moved toward fiction, which I think is so interesting and kind of strange.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So tell me about when your connection. Now I wish I remember all of this clearly, but what's your relationship with Pune and the ashram? What drew you, even back then, was this book sort of somewhere in your consciousness?
So when we met, I don't think I was writing. No, I definitely wasn't writing the book yet, but definitely Pune. I was going to Pune all the time when I was living in Bombay. I was constantly doing weekends in Pune, staying with my grandmother. And I went to the ashram once. My grandmother lives around the corner from the ashram, but a lot of members of my mother's family have belonged to the ashram over the years, and especially a lot of her elderly aunts. They were among Osho's first followers. So if you actually like look at old footage of Osho when he was traveling, or look at old pictures, you'll see my mom's aunts all around him. So the ashram was very much in my imagination from a young age. So I guess that's really how it developed. And the ashram played a very central role in earlier drafts of the book. But I think as the novel kind of, I don't know, evolved, it became less of a kind of central part of the book. As you see now, it's in the book, but it's not kind of the core, you know. It's not really the core of the book. Yeah. And how?
And was that part of what drew you back to Bombay after being in New York and New Jersey?
Drew me back to, well, I
not back to, sorry, drew you to.
Right. I mean, I don't know what it is about India. It's just, I think maybe I romanticized it so much before I lived there. You know, it was the place that my parents grew up and they left. And then I always was a sort of outsider, which, you know, actually when I was reading your book, it really made me, it reminded me so much of myself, because, you know, it's, you have this strong desire to belong, and yet there's so much fear and anxiety about being in the place that your parents grew up in. And then at the same, so you're just constantly in this insider-outsider conundrum, which I really felt with your protagonist in Destination Wedding.
Right.
You know, she's kind of between these two worlds. And, you know, I loved the scenes where she was like, you know, she was scared to cross the street. She can't, you know, speak Hindi or communicate. But at the same time, you know, she's so drawn to the place and you know, wants to be there. So yeah. Did you have?
Which I think we both did. Did I have what?
Did you have something similar when you moved to India?
Yeah, you know, I grew up partially in India, so I did do elementary school there, a little bit of middle school. I was always in and out. My parents spent 3 to 4 months every year. So they're both academics, so they had the long summer holidays, the long winter holidays, where we were always in Delhi or Calcutta. Right. I do speak the languages. I speak Hindi. I speak Bengali. We spend a lot of time there. So it was strange though, coming back on my own terms, not with my parents, to a city I'd never been to before. I didn't go back to Delhi, which is where I grew up. I went to Bombay, like you said, not back to, but to Bombay. There was something for me about Bombay that drew me, that was just calling to me. And from the minute I landed, from the minute I got in a taxi at the airport and felt safe, just such a strange but small and significant detail, the safety of a taxi in Bombay really made me feel that this is where I wanted to live. And I never expected to live there for as long as I still am, actually. I kept expecting to leave, to go back, but gradually it just became home. And I think for me, Bandra specifically, as we both know, allowed me to not have to constantly navigate those questions of insider versus outsider.
Because everybody in Bandra is something of an outsider.
Both, yeah.
Right.
And therefore we all sort of belong. And all of Bombay really is so welcoming.
And then I just wonder, and so then I was wondering, because I was thinking about you in Bombay, and when I think of you in Bombay, you're just at home there in my mind. Right. So I was just wondering what made you then decide to set both your novels in Delhi over Bombay?
That's a good question. I think maybe Bombay someday I will write about, but right now I feel maybe, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable writing about home. That makes me too vulnerable. Delhi is a little bit distant from me. I don't think I could ever live in Delhi again. But having been the place where I grew up, it had such a formative, significant experience. And maybe I also end up channeling more, again, like we said, cities that our parents belong to, take on a larger than life existence.
Yeah.
In a way that the city that I live in, I can't see the big picture as much. I narrow in on it. I see Bombay too intimately in many ways. Do you feel you have a Bombay novel? Are you planning on writing about Bombay?
No.
Or now Dubai?
Well, I would actually love to write about Dubai, but I might have to be careful about how I do that. But I've been thinking actually about writing about the US, maybe about, I don't know, maybe about New Jersey or something like that. But I think you might be right. There's something maybe a little too close about the place you grew up in. But I'm interested in looking closer at. There's a character in my novel about who he's from the States. He's married to the protagonist, to the narrator,
Right.
and I really enjoyed writing that kind of Indian American who kind of returns to India. Because maybe it reminded me of my own experience, and the kind of absurdity of his existence felt like it mirrored the absurdity of my existence when I was living in India as well. So I would be interested in writing about that, which is what I found very inspiring about your novel.
You there was an interview I read with you, which I read about you, read that you had given, I think, to Mint, in which you spoke about not being afraid of your characters, but wanting to be asked instead how living with those characters deformed you. And you said that maybe someone should ask your husband or children that instead. So if Pavan's around, I'm happy to ask him the question. If not, I want to ask you, because I was scared of your characters. And so what was it like to live with them for 7 years? What was your relationship with them? Because, your characters, they say truths and they think truths that I think so many of us avert our eyes to. There was so much about your book that was so magnificently grotesque. But to live with that in your head for, like you've said, 7 or 8 years, so the larger part of a decade, well, how did that deform you for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it did. I don't know exactly the ways it did, but I feel that is kind of the question people are asking. I mean, you're asking it directly, which I love. But people are kind of like, must have been hard. That must have been really difficult. Did you like your characters? And for me, it's not really ever about liking your characters. I think it's just about feeling that they're real and three-dimensional, and that you can kind of reach out and touch them in some way. How did it deform me? I'm sure it has. I'm the wrong person to ask about how my characters have deformed me. I think maybe they've healed me in a way. Because, for me, people ask, also another question that people have to ask is how much of this is autobiography?
Right.
How much is based on your life? I'm sure you get this question every day.
Yeah.
I think particularly because we're women, we get this question
Of course.
a lot. So, I think that it's not so much about whether it's autobiography or not autobiography. I think all these characters, if I've created them, they've come from somewhere inside of me, right? So even if it's something I don't want to look at, even if it's something, like you said, averting your eyes, even if it's something I want to avert my eyes from, I suppose over the course of writing this book, I had to face all of those aspects of my shadow. And they've all kind of come to the surface at various times, and I've had to sort of make contact with them. And I think that in itself is sort of a healing exercise. All of those aspects of yourself that are kind of buried. You can tell I love Jung. All of these aspects of yourself that you've kind of repressed and you don't want to look at. I think actually making contact with them is rewarding and healing and gives a kind of meaning.
Wait, then maybe this is a more specific question. When you finished writing, whenever you determined that for yourself, but now that the book's out in the world, presumably you are completely finished. Did you miss them? What do you feel about them? Do you miss your characters?
Do I miss my characters? Maybe I miss them. Yeah, I like them. I think they're kind of interesting, and they're difficult and they're complicated. They were actually kind of fun to write, the interaction between mother and daughter was it was fun to write some of that, you know. I didn't find it, I don't know what that says about me. I didn't find it as difficult to write, I think. I found it difficult to write because, you know, to get the right structure and the form and to develop the characters took time. But I didn't find them like painful. And you know what another interesting thing is, and maybe it's because I'm so close to the book, I don't know that I find the book as dark as everyone reads it finds it to be, which is kind of interesting. I mean, do you feel anything like that when you read your book? Because for me, as I told you, I think a few days ago, as I was reading the book, there were just sections where I had to stop and like I was actually laughing out loud because it's, I mean, your book has been called Wickedly Funny for a reason. It's really so funny. And I was wondering, are you consciously like constructing and writing humor or like satire, or is it kind of more of an organic, natural thing for you that just sort of translates in a different way to the reader as kind of humor?
I tried not to think of it as satire. And I know a lot of people do, but I actually think a lot of the characters and the situations are very rooted in reality taken to an extreme, but not to a satirical level, ideally. Humor for me is an extremely close cousin of anger. And I think I do consciously choose anger and also anxiety. And I think I do consciously make an effort to allow for myself humor to edge out the other two for the sake of my survival. And I do use my characters and my humor situations as a coping mechanism, as escapism. So it's actually a way for me to not constantly live within myself and to not let the anger and the anxiety win, to be able to escape to these characters who are perhaps burdened by their own, but living in a more whimsical fashion for at least the duration of the book that I'm working on. But at the same time, The Windfall especially, I think, had characters who were deeply anxious, who were deeply angry. So there, I think we were watching them ending up through that in more comedic situations. Destination Wedding, I think, has a certain, had more of a levity. And I wonder if that's because, and I'm sure we'll end up having to talk about this, although I'm not sure if we want to. Do we want to talk about how motherhood has affected our writing? I don't think there's any way to avoid it. But I know for me, I wrote Destination Wedding when my first child was 6 months old and I was pregnant with the second. So the writing process was very different. I wrote it in really short, focused bursts. And I think that infused it with a certain energy. Whereas The Windfall, I wrote with the luxury of time and hours spent staring out of a window while my characters played. So the humor and the comedy for me, it's in life in general a coping mechanism. And so I guess, yes, to answer your question, that therefore organically does make its way onto the page. And it's something that I cling to in order to avoid to be a coward, to avoid the negative emotions that haunt me.
That's so interesting. So then do you think in a way that might be something, do you think that anger might be kind of an eventuality you're moving towards, and it's just a question of finding like the right container for it in yourself, kind of, you know?
Well, I think the comedy in the books, and and also having kids has mellowed me. I don't know if you feel that way, but it really puts a lot into perspective. It's my temper is calmer. My concerns are more in perspective. Just priorities shift. You had finished writing this by the time your first was born, is that right?
Yeah, I was done with the draft that became this novel. Obviously there was editing and things that happened after, but yeah, I mean the bulk of the work was done. The bulk of the writing.
And do you feel your temperament has changed after having children?
I'm definitely more patient, but I'm patient with my children.
Same.
I'm sure my husband doesn't think I'm patient. And I'm sure he thinks I'm kind of like, I think we were having a conversation about this the other day. He thinks I'm kind of resentful of him, which maybe I am. I sort of feel a little bit like, and again, I don't know if this is all too personal to talk about, but I kind of feel like maybe because he's the primary breadwinner, um, his work takes precedence over mine in a way, and which to some degree is fair, of course, because we have to have, a roof over our heads. But I think there's a kind of resentment now that my time is kind of, split between two children under 2 years old and writing and a series of other things. And I feel like he kind of has a lot more free time. I feel like for you, how is it? How does it work with you? Because you and your husband are kind of in very creative fields. I guess there's a little bit more flexibility. So how does that all intersect with like motherhood and having children?
Well, definitely a bit more, but again, same like we said, Mike is also the primary breadwinner. So at the end of the day, he's on a more concrete deadline than my musings. So it's the same thing. And it is that frustration of recognizing that, especially in the middle of a pandemic where we don't have our usual childcare. So, when we do have our childcare, when in the normal times that hopefully we will return to at some point, I write like it's a job just as much as his. I'm very guarded and precious about my time, and I do it like a job. But right now, with everything in flux, without having childcare, we have to be realistic. That said, the semester starts in a few weeks, so I think the scales will have to shift and it'll have to rebalance as I go into a proper, rigorous academic schedule, which is not changeable. But fortunately, we are both self-employed, so that does give us a fair amount of flexibility, for which I've always been grateful, and especially now continue to be grateful.
And are you excited to teach? How
Yeah,
do you feel about teaching?
I love it. I can't wait to go. I was really hoping to be in the classroom. It's going to all be remote because Columbia's entire creative writing program will be remote this fall. But I absolutely love being in the classroom. I feel it really affects my writing. You did, what was it? Was it a 10-week workshop that you did at UEA?
The fellowship was 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
So you were there for quite a while. So did you feel your work was really affected by being in that setting? Was it a workshop setting?
So no, I was kind of doing informal workshops, but just a few. But I was sitting in on a lot of different master's classes and PhD seminars, which was fascinating because for me, I'd never even taken a writing class. So it was just, I didn't know really that there was this thing called craft. And I didn't know, that there was a kind of a formal way in which you could approach creative writing. So that was just mind-blowing for me. And actually I've wanted to ask you about, I always ask writers about their MFA experiences because I think I'm a little jealous maybe, and I feel a little sad that I haven't done one. So how was your MFA experience? You did your MFA at Columbia?
Yeah, I loved it. A lot of people dismiss it, and I know it's not for everybody, absolutely not for everybody, but I benefited from it immensely. Just to have that luxury of time and also to be surrounded by other people who are obsessed with books, be it writing or reading or editing, because my classmates, my peers have gone on to becoming not just many have become published authors, but also agents, also editors, sort of people working on literary magazines, sort of across the board. So to be surrounded by that, especially after 3 years in Bombay on the peripheries of Bollywood, was so deeply satisfying. So for me to be able to go back to that from the other side, I feel I'm teaching a workshop, and teaching a workshop has a similar effect to being in a workshop, because ultimately there's the full creative flexibility. You're not teaching someone right or wrong. You're discussing why something works. And so I benefit from it just as much, I feel, when I teach as when I was a student in the same program.
So you don't find, because I've heard some people say that workshops can be like paralyzing. So you've never felt that kind of...
Listen, I spent 3 years being rejected to my face by Bollywood directors before going into the MFA program. Nothing could, I came with the thickest skin possible. So for some people, yes, absolutely. For the thin-skinned, you have to be careful because there were people, there were classmates, there were faculty who were trying to take, yeah, maybe not for you. I went in with thick skin. It didn't trouble me. Rejection and criticism to my face doesn't. I managed to block a lot of it out. You know, when we've talked about this, when you're standing in front of a director in Bollywood and just being told everything that's wrong with you physically, then it's okay to be told what's wrong with what you put on the page.
Yeah. And did you develop like I'm like very curious to know about your writing process. So is it something you developed while you were doing your MFA, or you kind of had a writing process before that? And what does that look like?
I don't know if I still do. What I don't know if I do even now. I think it's constantly changing, and I have nothing concrete except I try to be in the world of my writing every day, whether that's actually on the laptop or just even in my head. Other than that, I don't think I have any process. And I know I'm talking almost more to routine, not actual craft process. But one thing with craft for me, and I felt this reading your book, but tell me if it wasn't this. I work from the characters up. I first have my characters and I live with them and I play with them and I think about them a lot before I get to the actual writing part of it and before I get to the actual book part, plot part of it. Is that similar? Was that similar for you? Did you find your characters first?
No, I kind of write sentence level. So I don't really know my character kind of emerges in this particular draft, especially the narrator particularly emerged out of the sentences and the word choice. So it was kind of like, you know, the opening sentence of the novel, I put it down, and it's interesting. I mean, there's this whole cult around the first sentence, and I always used to think it's really overblown. But I realized writing this draft how important the first sentence is, only because once I chose that first sentence, it really just narrowed everything down. You know, like there were not that many options left for me in a sense. There wasn't anywhere to really go. The first sentence really defined who this character was, what her anxieties were, what her relationships were like, and, you know, kind of set her up as unreliable in a way. So then once you have all of that kind of mapped out, I guess that is character, right? I mean, what else is character? So, but it sort of happened like sentence by sentence, the character emerged. I didn't know really who she was before, you know, I think I was a few chapters in before I really got a sense of who this person.
Your first sentence is so good. I mean, you're saying it narrowed your choices. I think it also makes it, I'm sure you've been hearing this constantly since the book came out, but also makes it so that you have to get to the second sentence and then onwards. It's just, it pulls you straight in. It's really good.
I mean, I didn't even think of it like that. I think when I was writing it, I just thought in a way, okay, I wanted it to be a sentence that would kind of encapsulate the story, if that makes sense, so that you can almost see the shape of the story in a sentence, if that's even possible.
I think so. And I've heard people say that they think that way about the last line of their novels. So now I kind of want to, I don't even have mine on hand, but I'm curious. Now I'll have to revisit your last line. The Windfall, the last line does sum it up. What's the last line of yours? I don't have a hard copy in front of me. What's the last line of your book?
The last line of Burnt Sugar is standing at the door of the flat. No. I ring the bell twice and lean against the wall, waiting to be let back in.
Again, that also gives us the shape of the book. Those are heavy first and last sentences. So, but you can tell that your work is done so much on the sentence level because each sentence just sings in your writing. Each sentence is really just so. It's got a real rhythm to it. Do you read it out loud at any point, your own writing?
I do read it out loud. I love to. I definitely work on each sentence a lot. I kind of labor over each sentence, and then I like to kind of collect sentences from writers that I love. So if I'm reading a book by, just say I'm reading a novel by like Javier Marias or something like that, I want to really kind of pick out maybe a dozen sentences. And I actually have a Word document with all these sentences. I don't even know some of them because I've not even attributed them always to somebody. But they're all just there, and I kind of revisit them again and again. Just if I want a certain sound or just a certain quality, and I'll just read the sentence, and it'll have a kind of maybe a musicality to it, and then I'll have that kind of rhythm in my head, the tone or whatever it is in my head as I'm writing. And I just find that to be kind of useful, because I think it's easy to, I don't know, to kind of push this metaphor. It's easy to kind of go a little deaf, and not be able to hear what you're doing, especially when you're writing from several hours. So then it's nice to have this as a touchstone to come back to. Do you keep any particular novels or any kind of writing around you while you're writing?
No, I write at a completely empty desk with only my computer in front of me because I'm so extremely easily distracted. What do you keep on hand?
Well, I have the bookshelf in the room, so I kind of can visit the bookshelf whenever I want to. But on my desk, no, nothing really on the desk, more like.
Are you particular about your writing space? You've always had such a beautiful aesthetic, and I think it makes sense to me that you also work in art curation and catalog writing. That just seems like such an obvious place for your writing to have come from, to have been born in. Do you have a specific, do you have to write in your writing desk, at your writing desk in your writing room, or are you flexible with it?
Actually, I very rarely write where I'm supposed to write. I mean, I don't want to show you where I am right now, but this fancy writing room is actually the back of the garage that we've converted into this like makeshift room. We've put up a kind of makeshift wall and like an AC that barely works, and it's kind of dark and dingy. So I have a few very bright lights. I had a beautiful writing room in the house with a view of like a frangipani, like a tree that always had white flowers on it, and it was all like very romantic. And then I had my first child, and he got the room. Although it was really funny because my husband and I discussed, we were like, oh, but does the baby need to be in the house? I mean, we can put him in the writing room in the garage. I mean, we were just like so clueless. We were like, but does the baby take up that much room? Does he need his own room? And we very quickly learned that yes, babies take up a lot of space, maybe not physical, room, they take up a lot of space. They
do, in every way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been working with noise canceling headphones in a corner of their playroom, and they think I can't hear them, but I kind of can in case I hear shrieking crying. But I've set up a desk in the corner of their playroom so I can continue to work. Avni, I just had a message pop up that was asking us a question, and now I don't know how to find it anymore. Hold on. Okay. Shondeep Bhattacharya is asking us, what do you find in the writings of the current writers which have moved away from the world of imagination and become realistic, clear statements? And what is your opinion about this change? Do you want to take it?
Has there been this shift? I don't know. I feel we're still in the realm of imagination, aren't we? Or
is it all fiction?
Yeah, I think so. I would love to get like a follow-up, maybe an elaboration of this question. Maybe I misunderstood it.
I would too, Shondeep. I'm also with Avni on this, that I'm not sure about the realistic, clear statements. I suppose I like
kind of
my writing is.
Yeah, is it kind of like a statement, or is it kind of a comment on like autofiction? Is that what he means? That people are kind of, I'm not sure.
Or less magical realism, maybe, I don't know, but I'm all for less magical realism. I'm not a fan. So if that is the question, now I can see I have Agastya asking about my thoughts on Indian matchmaking and how important is it to have a mediator for an arranged marriage. We talked about this last night. Can we both talk about this? I loved the show. Did you like it?
I loved it too. I'm definitely going to.
My fear was that it was going to give a regressive and singular and distilled representation of India and Indian weddings to the world, especially when I watched it after the initial hype, just a week or two after the initial hype. And at first it made me a little nervous because I think a lot of what we fight back as Indians living in America, now it's about to change with hopefully a half Indian American vice president. But I think one of the things that makes me nervous is having those singular points of representation that end up speaking for the entire country and our entire lived experience, which is obviously not possible. So we're not given the luxury of multiple points of view. And that was my fear. But I think Indian matchmaking didn't actually fall into that. I was quite pleased with the way it didn't fall into those tropes. What did you think?
All I could think about when I was reading your book was the insane kind of like similarities that like your book came out at the exact same time that Indian matchmaking became this mega hit like globally. And I just felt like, wow, I mean, what amazing synergy, right?
Yeah, within a week or two of each other, those both came out.
I mean, it's just completely like you're just in there with the zeitgeist. I don't know what else.
You know, to make it even more, one of the characters I overlapped with at Columbia during my MFA. I shouldn't say characters; it's a reality show. One of the people.
Oh my God!
The delightful, wonderful Vyasar, who I hear has become quite the fan favorite, was at Columbia at the same time as me.
Oh my! Did you know each other?
Very little, because he was in nonfiction and I was in fiction, and he started a year after me. So we didn't overlap in the classroom, but he was always a very lovely and a visible presence in the hallways. And I'm so happy to see so many people love him on the show. I don't know what his current marital status is, in case anyone is curious. I don't know.
my husband knows Aparna from Dubai because she lived.
And she's fantastic.
She's fantastic. And everybody, you know, there was so much hate against her, but I thought she was great.
I did too. I think that we need to continue our Indian matchmaking conversation offline, Avni, because I see more questions coming in. Zoya is asking both of us, what is the process you went through in naming your books? Where did the idea stem from? And was the end result of your book how you had originally planned it? I want you to answer first because you have two titles for your book.
Yeah, my novel is called Girl in White Cotton in India. And then it was kind of changed for the international audience to Burnt Sugar. And I think what ended up happening was, you know, in a way, Girl in White Cotton was the title I started with the first draft. And then when I sold the novel in the UK, one of the first conversations I had with my editor was about whether the title Girl in White Cotton would resonate with the UK audience. Particularly because white cotton has specific connotations in India. You know, it's in the UK, you can think about white cotton as kind of just this pure, like a girl in a pretty white dress or something like that. And in India, it's different, right? It's, you know, white cotton is grief. White cotton is asceticism. White cotton is associated with kind of the removal from, you know, everyday life. Renunciates wear white cotton. So I was interested in, I think there's more complexity. I think an Indian reading the novel might be able to understand the complexity of the title, whereas perhaps in other parts of the world, it wouldn't be immediately apparent. And the truth is you have like a minute. Or less than that, right? When somebody, because, you know, a few people asked me, but isn't this your opportunity to educate Western audiences? And I was like, well, not really, because I mean, I can educate them once they're reading the book, but I don't know if just the title is going to be enough to really educate them.
Right.
You have a minute.
Yeah, I don't even, the titles make me so nervous and so panicky. My editor titled my book. So is my unexciting answer to this. I have a lot of faith and trust in her. And if she likes it and my agent signs off on it, I'm sort of relieved of the responsibility, which is what happened in this case. Okay, I see two more questions for us. Kamya is asking, could you both please tell us a little bit about your research process? Do you think the researching and writing family is tough because of emotions involved?
I didn't do research. Is that bad? Oh, I did
No, same.
research about
I lived
Alzheimer's
my
disease.
right.
I did a lot of research about that. But other than that, in terms of writing about the family, is that the question? In terms of writing about
I
the
think so.
family?
Yeah, it's asking us that. Yes.
Yeah. No. What about you?
No, I mean I lived. It's I draw from living life. I suppose I guess we're fortunate enough to maybe be in professions where we can call that research, our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd rather do that than pore over old documents for sure. Sachdev Ramakrishna is asking us how we relate to cities of our origin, Bombay or Calcutta, now from a distance. Sachdev, just to clarify, Delhi is actually my city of origin. My father's from Calcutta. My mother's from Bombay. I lived in Delhi, and I think we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. And I'm not at much of a distance because I still live most of the year in Bombay. I'm not right now in the pandemic, but most of the year I live in Bombay. And your city of origin is New York.
Englewood, New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah. In the U.S. So yeah.
Which maybe we'll come back to in your next book, and then that question will have
Maybe
more weight, have more significance. Okay, what more? What actually made you sit down and write your book?
insanity, right?
I want to know the name. Right? Monita Sony is asking us that.
Did you know when you started writing what writing a book would entail? Because I think until you do it, it's very hard to explain to people how intense it is, how deeply traumatic it is, what a process it is, and how it really takes everything out of you.
No, I know socially when you meet people, they'll say, oh, you wrote a book, I want to write a book. Like it's just sort of some off the cuff, easy thing to do.
Right.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
It's exhausting. Yeah. I remember.
What made you? Do you have an answer to that? I don't know if I have an answer to that.
I guess I had to write. I mean, I think this book particularly had to be written. It wasn't like a conscious need to write. It was like coming from somewhere inside that I just had to. It had to come out. So I think, I don't know if I could have put myself through it otherwise, because it was such a long period of time. You know what I mean? I quit.
Are you working on something else? Are you on another novel?
I'm thinking about another novel. I haven't put anything down yet. What about you? Have you started? I have an idea for you if you haven't.
Do you? Please send it to me. I had started another one. I was fairly deep into it when the pandemic hit, and I still can't get my head around how quickly and how much our world changed. So that book I've actually set aside because I don't know what world I'm writing for or writing about anymore, because I don't know how deeply this will change us as a people. I don't know what we're going to come out on the other end as. And so I feel unable to continue working on what I was working on pre-pandemic, but just recently in the last few months, I feel I'm finally sort of finding my way into something new that I feel comfortable writing about in this strange world. What about you?
Well, I think you should write. I mean, so this is just, you may hate this idea, but I really think you need to write about motherhood, because you write about the way you talk and write about motherhood is so funny. If everybody, I'm sure most of you follow Diksha on Twitter and Instagram, but if you don't, you can thank me later. Please go and follow her right now. I actually wait for your tweets about motherhood and I wait for your pictures and posts because they're just so funny. And I just think you would write an amazing novel about.
Listen, between the two of us, in the last 3 years, we've had 4 kids. So it's going to be hard to not write about, have that touch upon our fiction from now on.
Well, I think this is
I do. I have a column at Mint, thanks to Anindita. I have a column at Mint where I am channeling a lot of my tweets in longer form. I'm told we have our last question and then we have to wrap up, which is, are there any books you would like to recommend to us? What have you been reading?
I have so many.
I know.
Let me think. Okay. This author,
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't even know how to pronounce her name properly, but this book is excellent. Sweet Days of Discipline. Excellent, excellent book. Natalia Ginsberg. I've just been reading some of her books. I'm just trying to think. I'm waiting for the new Elena Ferrante book.
Yeah.
She's out in a month. So yeah.
I loved, again, I don't know how to pronounce, Naise Dolan, the new Irish writer, her book, Exciting Times. I was drawn to it for the cover and I really loved it. And a book that's going to be forthcoming, I think, next year, which I have, Sanjana Sakhtian. Have you ever met her? Do you know her? She's a journalist and writer. She was in Bombay. I don't think you and her overlapped in Bombay, Sanjana. I don't know if you're watching. She also wrote a great piece for the New York Times about Indian matchmaking. And Sanjana is just a really interesting and wonderful new voice that will be unleashed on the world next year that I'm looking forward to.
Ooh, exciting. Okay, cool.
And I think our time's up.
Okay.
Thank you, Avni Doshi. Thank you, Diksha. That was a really beautiful drawing room conversation with so many insights. And how do you all manage to read so many books while you're looking after, you know, two babies each, husband, household chores, interviews, and all of the writing? I mean, that seems to be a magic that you need to also talk
That's
about.
how I get away from. I say, oh, I have to do research, I have to do work, so I pick books and I go sit by myself, and it's the only way people will leave me alone for a little while.
And what do you throw the baby at the husband?
Throw the baby
Always.
at the husband, throw the babies at the nanny, throw the babies at my mother-in-law, whoever's in the city at the time to
Or
Not out of
ignore the
window,
babies.
ignore the babies.
But you can also ignore them. The more you ignore them, the more they build resilience, right? I figure it's also good parenting.
They get used to it.
That's very American. Just ignore the
No,
baby and
American
let
is
them be.
being very involved.
Hovering,
Whoa.
right? Americans hover. That's why I hover.
Yeah.
I'm very American.
I thank my Indian mother friends for teaching me the art of ignoring.
Well, thank you both. I hope you've not been practicing too much of ignoring on those poor husbands who I'm not sure whether we needed to get them to sign off on a clearance form, considering they were very much part of this conversation. And thank you all for watching and being such a great audience. I'm sorry we couldn't take all the questions because we've run out of time. Please do remember to log in on Friday, the 14th of August, to view a set of two new sessions. We've got Alif Shafaq, 10 minutes, 38 seconds in this strange world. In conversation with Janice Pariat, Alif Shafaq is an award-winning novelist and the most widely read female writer in Turkey. She's also a women's rights activist and an inspirational public intellectual and speaker. Her most recent book was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and here she talks to Janice Pariat about her life and work. And this is at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 2:30 p.m. British Summer Time, and 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And the second session on Friday, the 14th of August, will be Akbar, Ira Mukherjee's absolutely stellar book, in conversation with Manu Pillai. Akbar was amongst the most admired of all of the Mughals and one of only two Indian rulers to be widely known as the Great. But before Ira Mukherjee's writings, he's been without a modern biography. Here, Mukherjee talks about her groundbreaking study with fellow historian Manu S. Pillai. This will be at 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 4 p.m. British Summer Time, and 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Stay safe, stay well. We'll see you on Friday.